My twin brother violently attacked my husband and shattered my perfect life, but his betrayal revealed a horrifying truth I was too blind to see. This is the story of how a single act of violence exposed a predator hiding behind the mask of the ideal husband, and how the troubled brother I once feared became the hero who saved not only my unborn child, but my future. Every family holds secrets, but some are too dangerous to ignore. Watch until the end to discover how I escaped a monster's carefully crafted trap and found the courage to trust again when everything in me screamed to run. This isn't just a story of survival, it's a warning about the wolves who walk among us wearing sheep's clothing. The sound of my twin brother's fist connecting with my husband's jaw echoed through the house like a gunshot. But it wasn't until I saw the blood that I realized Ethan had just saved my unborn child from a monster, wearing the mask of a perfect husband. My name is Olivia, and for most of my life, I've been defined by my relationship with my twin brother Ethan. Growing up in Portland, we were inseparable, finishing each other's sentences, sharing inside jokes that no one else understood, and defending each other fiercely against the world. But around 16, something in Ethan changed. I still remember finding him in our kitchen, swaying unsteadily as he clutched an empty bottle of our parents' expensive whiskey. His eyes were glassy, his smile lopsided in a way that made my stomach twist. "Come on, Liv, have some fun for once," he slurred, pushing a half-filled glass toward me. I declined and left, hoping this was just teenage rebellion. An hour later, I returned to find him barely able to stand. I fed him bread and water, cleaned up the evidence, and prayed our parents wouldn't notice. But Ethan's drinking didn't stop. Soon, I was finding vodka in his water bottle at school, empty beer cans under his bed, and witnessing his once bright eyes growing increasingly distant. I thought I could fix him with a heart-to-heart talk. That's what twins were supposed to do, right? Save each other? "You're acting like a complete idiot, Ethan. You're throwing your life away," I told him one afternoon, my voice trembling with frustration and fear. The water bottle hit the wall inches from my head with such force that it exploded, spraying us both. "Get the hell out, Olivia," he screamed, his face contorted with rage I'd never seen before. I backed away, realizing the brother I knew was disappearing before my eyes. Things escalated until the night Dad confronted Ethan about the bottles hidden in his room. One moment, Dad was emptying liquor into the sink. The next, Ethan's fist connected with his face with a sickening crack. Blood spattered across our white kitchen tiles as Mom screamed. I stood frozen in the doorway, unable to move as my family shattered before my eyes. What happened next was unexpected. Ethan collapsed into tears, looking at his hands like they belonged to someone else. "I'm so sorry." He sobbed as Dad, despite his bleeding nose, wrapped him in a fierce hug and promised to get him help. Fast forward 10 years, and Ethan seemed like a different person. Sober for a decade, married with a beautiful 4-year-old daughter named Emma. I had my own seemingly perfect life with my husband James, a successful architect with impeccable manners and unwavering patience. James had grown up with an alcoholic mother, so he understood my lingering anxiety about Ethan better than anyone. When I discovered I was pregnant, James's joy matched my own. Our family was growing, and finally, all the broken pieces of my past seemed to be mending. If only I had known that the true danger wasn't my brother with his troubled past, but the perfect husband who held me close each night, his hands gently resting on my growing belly, making plans for our future, a future that would soon unravel in the most horrifying way possible. But the storm that had been brewing on the horizon was about to hit with devastating force. Thanksgiving at my parents' Seattle home was supposed to be a celebration, my pregnancy announcement, Ethan's decade of sobriety, our family finally whole again. The turkey was roasting, filling the house with warmth and the promise of normalcy I'd craved my entire life. I was downstairs helping Mom with the cranberry sauce when I heard it, a dull thud followed by a cry of pain that sent ice through my veins. The wooden spoon clattered against the counter as I raced upstairs, my heart pounding in my ears. The scene that greeted me stopped me cold. James stumbling backward, blood trickling from his split lip, and Ethan standing over him, eyes blazing with a fury I hadn't seen since his darkest days. "Get the hell away from her," Ethan snarled, his fists still clenched at his sides. Without thinking, I lunged forward and slapped my brother across the face, the sound sharp in the sudden silence. "What is wrong with you?" I screamed, helping James to his feet. "Have you been drinking again?" The accusation hung in the air between us, as Ethan just stared at me, his expression unreadable. James, ever the peacemaker, gently pulled me away. "Let's go. Liv. He's not worth it." James whispered, his arm protectively around my shoulders. As we left, I caught my mother's gaze. Not angry or shocked, but filled with something that looked strangely like pity. For me, back at our apartment, I checked my phone to find it flooded with messages from my family, not condemning Ethan as I expected, but filled with cryptic warnings about James. My confusion must have shown on my face because James took my phone, scrolling through the messages with narrowing eyes. "They've always hated me," he said softly, deleting the messages before I could read them all. "Your brother's always been jealous of what we have." His fingers brushed my cheek with such tenderness that I almost believed him. Almost. The next morning, I waited until James was in the shower before trying to call Ethan. I needed answers, needed to understand what had possessed him to attack my husband. But as my finger hovered over Ethan's name, James appeared, water still dripping from his hair, and slapped the phone from my hand. It skittered across the hardwood floor, the screen cracking on impact. "Why the fuck would you call the man who assaulted me?" he hissed, his voice low and dangerous in a way I'd never heard before. Something in his eyes, a coldness, a calculation, made my skin crawl. This wasn't the James I knew, the man who held me when I cried about Ethan's struggles, who promised to be the father his own father never was. "Ethan needs help," I stammered, retreating a step. "I need to make sure he's okay." "So you're siding with him?" James's voice rose, his face flushing. I didn't realize I married someone who supports abusers. I forced my expression to soften, recognizing the dangerous ground I was treading. "Of course not. Baby, I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking straight." The words tasted like ash in my mouth. He nodded, satisfied. "Good girl," he murmured, kissing my forehead before heading to the kitchen. In that moment, as I watched him walk away, a terrible suspicion began to bloom. What had Ethan actually seen? What was in those deleted messages? And most terrifyingly, what was my husband hiding that could make my volatile twin react with such protective rage? The moment James left for work, the mask of submission I'd carefully constructed crumbled away. Something was deeply, terribly wrong, and the small life growing inside me depended on finding the truth. With shaking hands, I grabbed my car keys and drove to the park 3 miles from our home, far enough that James wouldn't accidentally spot me. I called Ethan, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Olivia?" His voice was urgent, tense. "Are you alone? Are you safe?" "I need to know what happened at Thanksgiving," I whispered, tears threatening to spill. "James is acting different, scary different." There was a heavy pause before Ethan spoke again. "Come to Mom and Dad's right now. Don't go home first. Don't tell him where you're going." The gravity in his voice sent chills down my spine. When I arrived, Mom was sitting on the couch, her face pale and drawn. Dad couldn't meet my eyes. Ethan pulled me into the kitchen, his grip on my arm almost painful. "Emma was in the bathroom," he said without preamble, his voice low and cold in a way I'd never heard before. "I saw James outside the door." He was. Ethan swallowed hard, disgust twisting his features. His hands were in his pants. "Liv." He was looking through the keyhole with this smile I'll never forget as long as I live. The world tilted beneath me. I grabbed the counter for support, bile rising in my throat. "No," I whispered. "There must be some mistake. James wouldn't." But even as I denied it, pieces started falling into place. His insistence on babysitting our neighbor's daughter, his eagerness when my pregnant friend visited, the secret passwords on all his devices. "Are you absolutely sure?" I asked, my voice barely audible. The certainty in Ethan's eyes was my answer. This wasn't drunken paranoia or misinterpretation. This was real. "We need evidence," I said finally, surprising myself with my own clarity. "If what you're saying is true, we need to prove it." The next day, I called in sick to work. As soon as James left, I tore our apartment apart searching for anything suspicious. His laptop was password protected, and multiple attempts with birth dates and anniversaries failed. Then I remembered the USB drive he always carried on his keychain, his work backup that he guarded so carefully. I found his spare keys and removed the drive with trembling fingers. When I plugged it into my laptop, I discovered folders neatly organized by dates. What I found inside made me vomit into the wastebasket beside our desk. Images of children, including Emma and other neighborhood kids, taken secretly through windows or at the park. None were explicit, thank God, but the intent behind them was unmistakable. I was married to a predator, carrying his child. I called Ethan immediately. "I found something." I choked out. "You were right." 20 minutes later, Ethan was at our apartment. His face hardened as he scrolled through the images, jaw clenched so tight I could see a muscle twitching in his cheek. "We're going to the police," he said firmly. I nodded, but froze at the sound of the garage door opening. James was home early. Panic exploded in my chest as I slammed the laptop shut. Ethan quickly pocketed the USB drive, positioning himself between me and the door just as James walked in. His casual smile faltered when he saw Ethan. "What are you doing here?" James asked, his voice deceptively soft. His eyes darted from Ethan to me, then to the closed laptop. "Checking on my sister," Ethan replied evenly, though I could see the tension in his shoulders. "After what happened, I wanted to make sure she was okay." James's eyes narrowed, calculating. "You should leave," he said, each word precise and threatening. After Ethan left, James turned to me. "Why was he really here?" he demanded, watching my face for any sign of deception. "Like he said, just checking on me." I lied, placing a protective hand over my belly. "The baby's been making me sick all morning." He seemed to accept this, but his gaze lingered on the laptop a moment too long. As he walked to his desk, I texted Ethan behind my back. "He knows something's wrong. What do we do?" The response came immediately. "Don't confront him. Act normal. We need more evidence before going to the police." As I watched James search for his missing keys, his movements increasingly agitated, I realized with bone-chilling clarity that I was trapped in my own home with a monster, and he was beginning to suspect I knew his secret. The next 72 hours became the most carefully orchestrated performance of my life. Every smile, every casual touch, every "I love you" was delivered with practiced precision while nausea churned beneath my ribs, not from pregnancy, but from the knowledge of who was sleeping beside me. James watched me constantly now, his eyes following me as I moved around our home, checking my phone when I wasn't looking. His suspicion a palpable force between us. On the third day, salvation arrived in the form of Detective Elena Martinez. Ethan had brought the evidence directly to the Portland Police Department's Crimes Against Children unit, and Detective Martinez wasted no time. The knock on our door came at 7:30 a.m., just as James was knotting his tie for work. "James Wilson?" she asked, flashing her badge while uniformed officers flanked her. "We have a warrant to search these premises and seize electronic devices." Her dark eyes flicked to me, a silent question in them. "Are you okay?" The transformation in James was instantaneous and terrifying. His face drained of color before flushing crimson, his body coiling like a spring about to release. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought he might lunge at the officers, or worse, at me. Instead, his shoulders slumped in defeat as the officers entered our home. "This is a mistake," he said softly, his eyes finding mine. "Tell them, Olivia. Tell them this is all a misunderstanding." The pleading in his voice almost sounded genuine, and I wondered how many others had been fooled by his performance. "We found your flash drive, James," I whispered. "I saw the pictures." Something dark and ugly flashed across his face before he was handcuffed and led away, leaving me standing in the wreckage of what I'd thought was my perfect life. What followed was a blur of statements, evidence collection, and devastating revelations. Detective Martinez became my lifeline, her straightforward compassion an anchor in the chaos. "This wasn't just about the pictures," she explained during one of our meetings in her cramped office. "James was part of an online network. There are other arrests happening as we speak." The worst came when she slid a folder across her desk, her expression grim. "We found these in his email account," she said softly. "I think you should know exactly who you were dealing with." Inside were screenshots of conversations where James had discussed me, how he'd researched my background, orchestrated our chance meeting at the coffee shop, and systematically manipulated me into marriage. I wasn't his wife. I was an acquisition, chosen specifically because my brother's troubled history made me vulnerable, desperate for stability. Every loving moment had been calculated, every understanding. Conversation about Ethan designed to isolate me from the one person who might see through his facade. "He's going away for a long time," Detective Martinez assured me, her hand steady on my shoulder as I sobbed. "The evidence is overwhelming." 2 weeks later, James accepted a plea deal, 15 years without possibility of early parole, lifetime registration as a sex offender. I filed for divorce immediately, changing my name back to Parker and requesting that he have no rights to our unborn child. The judge granted both without hesitation. In the midst of this nightmare, a miracle occurred. On a rainy April morning, After 18 hours of labor with Ethan and my mother at my side, my daughter Lily came into the world. 7 pounds, 3 ounces of perfection with tiny fingernails and a fierce cry that announced her presence to the world. As I held her against my chest, overwhelmed by a love so powerful it felt like physical pain, I made her a silent promise. Nothing would ever harm her. No one would ever use her. She would be safe, protected, and loved beyond measure. For 3 months, life settled into a cautious rhythm of night feedings, family support, and healing. I moved in with my parents, unable to return to the apartment I'd shared with James. Ethan visited daily, bringing little gifts for Lily and quiet, steady presence for me. It seemed like we might actually be okay. Then Detective Martinez called, her voice tense. "James has been contacting someone on the outside," she said without preamble. "A former colleague named Chris Parker. He's been asking about you and Lily. We've brought Parker in for questioning, but I thought you should know." Her pause was heavy with unspoken warning. "He's been seen driving by your parents' house, Olivia." The fragile security I'd built crumbled like sand. James might be behind bars, but his reach extended beyond them, threatening the new life I was desperately trying to create. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in my parents' house, every shadow that slid across the wall became James or his proxy Chris coming to take Lily. The security cameras Ethan had installed suddenly seemed woefully inadequate against the phantom threat lurking just beyond our doorstep. My daughter slept peacefully in her crib, unaware that her father was orchestrating his revenge from behind prison walls. "We need to disappear," I told my family over breakfast, my decision crystallizing with unexpected clarity. "As long as we're here, he can find us. He knows this city, these people. He'll never stop trying." My mother's eyes filled with tears, and my father's jaw tightened. But it was Ethan who spoke. "You're right," he said, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. "And I know exactly where you should go." Charleston, South Carolina was 3,000 miles from Portland, a city of historic homes, swaying palmettos, and salt-tinged air where no one knew my name or my shame. Ethan's college roommate owned a small real estate company there and helped me find a modest blue cottage in a quiet neighborhood where children played freely in front yards without fear. Before I left, I legally changed both my last name and Lily's to Montgomery, my grandmother's maiden name, untraceable to my past with James. The drive across the country with a 6-month-old should have been nightmarish, but instead, it felt like exhaling after holding my breath for years. Each state line we crossed put more distance between us and James's influence. By the time we reached the Atlantic coast, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before Thanksgiving. Hope. Our cottage needed work, peeling paint, creaky floorboards, an ancient HVAC system that groaned like a dying animal. But it was ours, a blank canvas for our new beginning. I found a job as a bookkeeper at a local marina, and Lily thrived in the warm southern climate, her chubby legs kicking with delight as I dipped her toes in the ocean for the first time. But safety came with a price. I installed security cameras before unpacking a single box. I checked the locks 3 times every night. I created elaborate cover stories to explain my sudden appearance in Charleston as a single mother. I never posted pictures of Lily online, never used location tags, never gave out our address. My neighbors probably thought I was peculiar, perhaps even paranoid, but I couldn't risk James finding us through some careless social media post or loose-lipped acquaintance. Despite these precautions, Charleston began to work its gentle magic on our wounded hearts. Lily took her first steps on our screened porch during a summer thunderstorm, her delighted giggles competing with the rumbling sky. I made cautious friendships with other mothers at the park, women who respected my privacy even if they didn't understand it. My boss at the marina, a gruff retired Navy officer named Harold, increased my hours and responsibilities without being asked, seeming to sense my need for financial independence. And then there was Michael. He ran the youth sailing program at the marina, teaching children as young as 8 to navigate the harbor in small optimist dingers. I first noticed him because of how he spoke to the children, never down to them, always with respect and good humor. When 5-year-old Lily became fascinated with the boats, Michael began saving the colorful sailing ribbons for her, presenting them with a formal bow that made her giggle. "Your daughter's going to be a sailor," he told me one afternoon as we watched her examining a compass with intense concentration. "She's got a natural feel for the water." "Maybe in a few years," I replied, my smile polite but distant. I'd become an expert at friendly deflection, at keeping people precisely at arm's length. If Michael noticed my reticence, he never mentioned it. Instead, he simply existed in our periphery, a kind presence who never pushed or pried. He invited us to community events at the marina, respected my frequent declines, and celebrated when I occasionally accepted. When Lily's daycare closed unexpectedly one afternoon, Michael simply set up a small table in his office where she could color while I finished my shift. "You don't have to be afraid of everyone, you know?" he said quietly as he walked us to our car that evening. The statement so unexpected it stopped me in my tracks. Some people just want to help because it's the right thing to do. I stared at him, this man who had somehow seen through my carefully constructed walls, and felt something I'd thought James had killed forever, the dangerous desire to trust again. That simple statement, "You don't have to be afraid of everyone," became a splinter in my mind, impossible to ignore as weeks turned into months and Michael's patient presence remained constant. He never pushed, never demanded, never made me feel like my wariness was unfounded. Instead, he simply waited, as though he understood that trust, once shattered, could only be rebuilt one small piece at a time. On Lily's 7th birthday, surrounded by balloons and the handful of friends she'd made at school, I watched as Michael taught the children to tie sailor's knots with colorful rope. The sunlight caught in his dark hair, and the genuine delight on his face as tiny fingers mastered a difficult knot made something warm unfurl in my chest. For 3 years, he had been nothing but kind, respectful, and honest, not just with me, but with my daughter. I told him, Ethan admitted during his monthly visit from Portland, catching me watching Michael. About James, about what happened. My heart stuttered with betrayal until he continued. He said he figured it was something like that, and it didn't change how he felt about you both. He just wanted me to know he understood why you needed time. That night, after the party ended and Lily was asleep amid her new treasures, I found Michael on the porch, collecting the last of the wrapping paper. "Ethan told me that you know," I said simply, my voice surprisingly steady. Michael straightened, his eyes serious in the porch light. "I suspected. The way you flinch sometimes when someone moves too quickly. How you always position yourself between Lily and any unfamiliar man." He stepped closer, careful to telegraph his movements. "Olivia, what happened to you is unimaginable, but it doesn't define who you are, or who we could be, if you're willing to try." 6 months later, Michael knelt not in front of me, but in front of Lily. "I love your mom very much," he said, his voice slightly shaky, "and I love you too. I was wondering if you'd be okay with me asking your mom to marry me, and maybe someday, if you'd like, I could be your dad." Lily's eyes widened before she launched herself into his arms with such force he nearly toppled over. "Yes," she exclaimed. "Can I be the one to tell Grandma and Uncle Ethan?" Only then did Michael turn to me. Still on one knee, Lily perched on his shoulder. The ring he offered was simple, a sapphire the color of Charleston's harbor at dawn, nestled in a band of burnished silver. "Olivia Montgomery," he said softly, "will you build a life with me?" We married on the beach at sunset, waves lapping at the makeshift altar. Ethan stood as Michael's best man, and Lily, resplendent in a dress she'd helped design, served as my maid of honor. As we exchanged vows, I looked at my brother, once the wild card of our family, now my steadfast protector, and felt a gratitude so profound it brought tears to my eyes. Later, as Michael danced with Lily, her small feet balanced on his, Ethan joined me at the edge of the reception. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't been at Thanksgiving that day?" he asked quietly. "If I hadn't seen James outside that bathroom door?" The question sent a chill through me despite the warm evening. "Every day," I admitted. "You saved us, Ethan. Not just from him, but from a life where we never would have known the danger until it was too late." He shook his head, watching Lily's delighted face as Michael twirled her. "We saved each other, Liv. Always have." As I watch my daughter grow, safe and loved in this life we've built from the ashes of betrayal, I understand the profound truth in those words. Sometimes the people we think will hurt us become our saviors, and sometimes the most dangerous monsters wear the most convincing disguises of normalcy. The greatest gift Ethan gave me wasn't just revealing James's true nature. It was teaching me that while caution is necessary, closing yourself off from the possibility of love is its own kind of prison. In the aftermath of betrayal, I discovered that sometimes our greatest protectors come from unexpected places. My brother's troubled past gave him the insight to see the predator I couldn't, proving that our deepest wounds often become our strongest shields. The journey taught me that true safety isn't found in isolation, but in carefully chosen trust. Remember, always listen to your instincts. Protect the vulnerable at all costs, and know that your past doesn't determine your future, it just teaches you to recognize genuine safety when you find it. If my story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below. Your experience might be someone else's lifeline in their darkest hour. Stay vigilant, stay connected. I'll see you in the next video.